Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield with Manny Things, and welcome to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the show where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you enjoy this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Things. Without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the shooting podcast where I talk to anyone I want to within the shooting industry. But today, we're going to talk about our sponsor first. That is Go Fast Don't Suck. So if you need a jersey, awesome t-shirts, dry fire decals, or just memes on the internet, go check out gofastdon'tsuck.net for all your entertainment and pleasure needs. Anyway, without further ado, let's introduce today's guest. Today's guest is Mr. Yee-Min Lin. How are you doing today? How are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good, Alex. It's good to be on the show today.
It is a good day. It's a good day. Yeah, whatever day it is. It's early March, so it's not too bad. We got some time before this actually had to happen. So that's kind of good. But I know who you are, Yee. But do you want to tell the general viewing population who you are?
So my name is Yee-Min. I'm a USPSA competitor out of the California area, San Francisco Bay Area to be precise. I got involved in USPSA around 2014. So for those of you who might remember, I got into the sport from the tactical defensive community. I was originally there, and there was an excellent limited shooter by the name of Gabe White, who sort of talked about how USPSA made him a more efficient competitor and actually improved his skills as a CCW carrier. And so I got started with that, really fell in love with the sport, saw how great of a community it was, and I started volunteering, got my R certification a year later, my CRO certification a year after that, and then I decided, I wanted to see what matches were like outside of my local area, and the best way to go about doing that was volunteering to go work matches. So I started volunteering, working major matches all over the country. So I'm a CRO. I've also worked as a RM for a couple of level 2 matches, and that's kind of carried me to where I am now.
Any aspirations to become a range master?
I was actually in the RM program for one reason or another. That wasn't able to happen. Just with the pandemic and everything else, I wasn't able to give it the attention that it really deserved. So, but that was something that I thought about. Being a range master and serving the USPSA community in greater and greater roles.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely cool. We've got a couple range masters close to me and local, so it's kind of nice to see them and how they work and operate, which is kind of cool. Luckily enough, we have an RMI who's like an hour from me, so if we need a CRO and RO class, it's kind of easy.
Nice. Which RMI is
that? Gary Johnson.
Oh yeah, no, Gary Johnson's super cool. I've worked with him before. I think at the 1 year I shot Area 5 up in Brooklyn, and so yeah, he's a great resource.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is. He's I think him and Walt are taking care of Area 5 this year. They're both being the RM, so it's kind of nice.
Nice.
But anyway, so you mentioned Gabe White. Have you taken any formal training for competitive shooting?
I have been really fortunate in my shooting career to have access to a lot of really excellent trainers. So Richmond Rod and Gun Club, we run a match once every 2 weeks, and it is a huge match. On the low end, we get about 80. During the summer months, we get 150 to 160. So there's a very large community there that makes it fairly easy for trainers to come out. I don't necessarily want to get too much in the name dropping, but just about anybody that's out there, I've basically taken classes from. So Steve Anderson, I had a really excellent opportunity to train with Eric Raffel. Like, that was pretty amazing. Charlie Perez, Ben Steger. There's very few people that I haven't been able to kind of learn from and see how they observe the game and what's made them successful.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking back at it now, if you had not taken those classes, would you be where you are today at your level?
That's a really good question, and I really don't know. I mean, so one of the interesting things about USPSA, and you've seen it on the Brian Akinos forums, a lot of the information that's provided at the time, you absorb that information, but you're not necessarily, sometimes you're not necessarily in the right place. So, it was about maybe 3 or 4 years into my shooting career before I was able to take a class with, then Ron Avery with TPC. And, I just wasn't, that was the right time and place for me to understand what a well-behaved gun looks like, how to actually grip a gun effectively. And then I went and shot a match and was like, oh, I'm totally gonna, kill this Steve Anderson class the next week. And I just, all sorts of things happened. And at that time, Steve and his mental management process was exactly what I needed to hear then. Is it possible for you to be able to, for someone to be able to, get to where you're at, through your own experiences? Absolutely. But there's the interesting about training is like, so I'm an M class production stack shooter, and even now, there's always things that I learned in the past that I somewhat internalize, and then real life gets in the way, and then you have to take a minute to step back and go, oh wait, I remember what I was supposed to do, and you sort of have to focus on the fundamentals, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Is focusing on the fundamentals of, what my grip needs to look like, what the draw needs to look like, and sort of very basic things to build up to the more advanced stuff that people generally think about in terms of movement and your visual cues and, things like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I can agree with that. Fundamentals is I mean, all of it is really fundamentals, and then you've got to just apply those fundamentals in stages and all that good stuff. And eventually, if you're lucky enough, it all goes out well.
Allegedly, but you have to do it multiple times in a match, and that's one of the really great things about USPSA is that it's not something that if you suddenly find a secret to life, universe, and everything, that it's always going to go like that on every stage. Every stage is its own unique challenge, and you have to be able to consistently execute that to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of stages, you as the match director for these, bi-weekly matches you're having, are you the only one designing these stages, or do you have a pool of trusted stage designers?
So Richmond, we actually have a very unique situation. So in order to be able to practice on the range during the week when the club is closed, you actually have to be an action range officer. So we actually have a pool of about 90 folks that we can draw from as match directors. And the way that we run it at Richmond is that every match we rotate. So let's say, it's you, me, and a couple other guys. We'd be like, okay, this week you're the match director. This week you're the match director. We have a Facebook page that we broadcast to the rest of the club that says, hey, I'm the match director. I need stage designers. So people will volunteer to design stages. Some people will volunteer to build stages. And so on the, it gives us two very different looks. So one, we never really have match directors burn out because generally you're only going to be a match director about once every 12 to 18 months. And then as far as, stage designers, we probably have somewhere between 30 to 40 stage designers that we can pull from. So that really helps with seeing a wide variety of stages and different thoughts and philosophies. On the other hand, you can get it where, again, I've said we've had, up to 160 people. That's a real challenge to be able to design stages that will flow through so that you don't have a Sunday match that ends up, taking 8 hours.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the challenge. Now, when you say do you have full 12-man squads? Or are you trying to have like 10-man squads on those kind of matches?
I wish we had 10-man squads. So we recently added some bays during the pandemic that allowed us to run 6-stage matches. But back in the day, and our local match is actually a 2-day match. So we actually run about anywhere between 40 to 50 people on Saturdays, and then everybody else shows up on Sundays. So the Saturday squads are 10-man squads. So that flows fairly well. But on Sundays, I mean, when we were only 5 stages, you'd have 25-man squads. I mean, yeah, it make for a really long day. So now we have 6 bays. And so, we're somewhere between 15 and 18, but when it's really busy, we can still get 20-man plus squads. And I know, for a lot of folks that are used to sort of 10 to 12-man squads tops, it makes for a significantly longer day than your typical match around the country.
It's okay. I'll shoot, clean my hands, and eat a sandwich, and I'll be back in the back of the bay. And then it's like, just let me know when we're moving.
Yeah, no, we've definitely had that. I mean, so we try to balance that with our stage designs, but there is the occasion where it might take you 45 minutes to an hour to go through a stage. So yeah, there's a lot more downtime at our local matches than you would typically see elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, and you were talking about you getting your stage designers. Is there times where you just like no one wants to design a stage, where you're like, I kind of need a stage still, or is everyone still fairly good about pitching in on that?
But that will occasionally happen where somebody might ask for stage designers. So what we also have at Richmond is we also have a safety crew. So it's a group of us that basically go through and vet the stages to make sure that they are safe and USPSA legal for the range that we have. So usually when those occasions come up, there's usually a core group of people that will say, okay, yeah, you don't have who you need. All right, I'll gin up a stage.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So there is a backstop to that in case we don't get enough volunteers.
Mm-hmm. And typically, how long does it take one of your matches to get put on the ground?
So this is something that's also very unique to Richmond is that from the time before I started, we actually have organized practice on Saturdays. So every Saturday from 9:30 to 1:30, there's organized practice. So we have a static line where you can shoot at targets at about 10 yards of the plate rack, and then we build a practice stage. So our build times are very compressed because the practice will end at 1:30, and then usually the Saturday squads will start at about 2:30 to 3 o'clock, depending on how much daylight we have. So we do not have a lot of time, maybe an hour, hour and a half to get all the stages on the ground and vetted before the Saturday squads get started.
Mm-hmm. I do kind of like that 2-day local format. There's one club local-ish to me that does that, where they're Saturday AM, they'll have like an 8 a.m. squad come through, but they're building the stages, and then everyone starts shooting at like 10 or 11. So it's kind of nice that way. And then you can get multiple. You could even run the match twice. You just have to shoot 2 different divisions. But
Nice.
yeah, it was definitely a way for them to get stage designers and stage builders for sure. So, Yee, what are you currently shooting right now? What division and gun?
I am shooting carry optics. So I finally decided to jump on the bandwagon. And so initially I started with an M&P Gen 1. It was a pistol that I had that was milled for carry optics long before that was even an idea. And it was what I had, and it was an easy way to get into it. I shot that plastic gun for about a year or so. And then I went back to the dark side and got a Tanfo and got that built for carry optics. And so that's what I'm currently shooting.
So you were a hardcore production guy at one point. Is production dead?
Ooh, that's a tough question, dude. I mean, I like production for what it is. So I understand that there are definitely folks in the sport that prefer to shoot all the rounds, not have to worry about reloading, not have to worry about this, that, and the other. I appreciated production for what it is. It was a very I was a little bit more an intellectual and a purist division in terms of being very good with your fundamentals, very good with your reloading, very good with being able to call shots. But then at the same time, you sort of look at where the industry is going, where you can buy guns off the shelf right now that are already optics ready. So one could conceivably say that carry optics is essentially the new production, right? I can go to a store, I can buy a Glock 34 MOS, or I can buy a SIG, P320 in whatever variation you want. It comes with an optic already there, and in fact, essentially all you have to do is just get some base pads, and now you're ready to show up and shoot. So I don't necessarily want to say that it's dying. I think there's always a place for a low capacity, more technical division. But you also kind of have to recognize where the market is going and what what the members are looking for. And in this case, it's shoot all the rounds and really focus on having fun. And there is a place for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know locally to me, a lot of production shooters have found different divisions, if it's carry optics or gone to limited. or well, no one's gone to PCC because no one wants to be made fun of for shooting PCC, I guess. But but yeah,
Yeah,
it seems like it's gone, at least locally to me. It's gone away. I don't know about you at Richmond.
so California, we are a little bit of a different beast because we still have certain rules and regulations that people have to abide by. So production is still a reasonably robust division for us, um, in terms of mag capacity limits and whatnot. But there is something to be said. A lot of the really good production shooters have basically shifted over to carry optics. So there is something to be said about you go to where the heat is, right? So if all the guys are moving into a particular division and that's who you want to judge yourself by, it's really difficult to not take the plunge. So
Mm-hmm. Not to dig into two of like the laws in California, but um, is there an issue with people coming into the state shooting like majors there if you're traveling from out of state into California?
uh, I mean, again, for those of you people listening, none of this is legal advice, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
exactly.
so legally, there could potentially be some issues. But the reality is it's very similar to the discussions that came up when a nationals was announced in Colorado, right? So we do have laws in place that say you can't buy, sell, or import high capacity magazines, but for now, there's nothing that says that you can't actually own them. And that seems very odd, right? Okay, so I can't buy them, but I can own them. So the reality is that if someone were to come in and they were shooting with high capacity magazines, the practical aspect is that nothing will probably happen. But if you're looking for 100% guarantee that nothing will happen, nobody could really say that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Fair enough.
effectively, if you show up right now, with a high cap bag, and like let's say you're flying out here, you're like, hey, I want to shoot a match. If you were to come in with your carry optics guns, again, TSA isn't going to say anything. I mean, TSA only enforces federal laws, so you would you would be more than likely fine.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Because yeah, that has been a big debate lately with Colorado or everyone's afraid to go to California. It seems like and go shoot some matches. So, well, at least it seems.
No,
Y'all have.
I mean it's a real concern. I mean, you look at Colorado, and yeah, Colorado says you can't have more than 15 rounds. And one of the interesting things about the West Coast is that we have a lot of laws, and then uh, the enforcement of those laws is not the same. Just like you can always look at any place you go to, and there's laws that are in place that you could get in trouble for a wide variety of things, but the practical enforcement of that usually doesn't match what the reality is.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So if you're always on the range, does that mean you're always practicing then?
I wish. I think maybe 2018, 2019 was when I was really pushing hard and practicing. I like a lot of other folks in the sport right now. You're sort of counting your primers. So to a certain extent, I'm definitely following Jay Beal a little bit more in the do lots of dry fire and then occasionally live fire to validate the dry fire. But I'm usually at the range, doing more non-shooting related work than actual practice.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about non-shooting work, is that just being like a range safety officer there, or like actually moving dirt, or watching people and running the facility?
Some of it is maintenance stuff. I mean, so some of it's volunteers. So there's some maintenance work that goes on, and there's always some things to do. I'll be out there, trying to clean brass, sort brass, process brass. Get ready to try to reload. So there's a lot of things that can eat up your time on the range that doesn't necessarily just involve practice.
Gotcha. Now, this is kind of the fun part. You are known as the traveling CRO. Now, what really kind of, besides, wanting to expand in the sport, made you like say, yes, I want to go to all these majors. I want to work them all. What's driving you to kind of keep doing that and travel seems like every freaking state?
So when I first started with it, there's certainly a financial, excuse me, there's certainly a financial aspect related to that. You know, I it's not really, maybe it's something that we sort of discussed privately, but the match fees are really very small cost to shooting at a major. Then you start thinking about ammo, flights out there, hotel. That's really where a lot of that comes from. So initially, I wanted to see matches outside of California, and financially, the easiest way for me to go about doing that was to volunteer. That's certainly how I started. Where I'm at with traveling now is you go out there and you see how matches are run in other parts of the country. It's a really great opportunity to get ideas to make your match more effective. And ultimately, it's the people, right? So there are matches I go to now just because one, I do still like working and being that fair and professional CRO/RO for competitors. But it's also a really great opportunity for me to catch up with guys around the country. We only that I may only see a couple times a year, but you can catch up with them, see how things are going, you know, build those social relationships that are really the biggest aspect of the sport.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I think we all enjoy. I think we love shooting, and that's probably why we all got into this. But we love the camaraderie we've made with the people on the range. I mean, there's nothing bad about meeting new people and seeing those familiar faces you hear about on the Instagram and whatnot, like meeting Max Michelle or meeting JJ. And
Oh no, I mean really one of the great aspects about USPSA is that name another sport where somebody who is a very casual participant can meet and talk and interact with the very best in the sport, and have it be a real social interaction, not just, oh yeah, let me give you an autograph. They'll Max and JJ, I've met them, and they're more than willing to talk about the things that they work through, the struggles they have, what their processes are to be great at this game that we play.
and it seems like they keep getting younger. I mean, at least JJ keeps looking younger and younger as he goes.
He has. I wish I knew what his secret was.
Yeah, me too. Maybe it's drinking the blood of his enemies or their tears or whatever, or all the, I don't know, all the food he eats. I don't know. But
He does eat a lot of food.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got to stay ripped. He's got to compete with his wife on the Peloton or something. So I mean, he's got to bulk up somehow, right?
Yep.
Now, how many matches on average are you still staffing a year?
As a general rule of thumb, probably somewhere between 5 and 8.
Is that a comfortable number, or would you like to do more, or is this kind of like a restriction for you?
I think the biggest challenge is always going to be time and cost. So even the matches that I do staff and work, there is a cost associated with that. I mean, would I love to be able to be in a situation where, um, but 5 to 8 is a pretty, it spaces out fairly well. I mean, we all still have to balance our real world obligations, right? So, I have two boys, and having to participate in what you love about the sport, but then still be present for your kids and make sure that you're not an absentee father. That's an individual choice on balancing the two.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you thought about bringing them out to the range and starting them in USPSA?
So my youngest, it's always been a thought. My youngest, so the very first nationals I attended in Barrie, Illinois. So this was production nats in 2015. I actually had to bring my youngest, so he was I think 3 at the time. So we were actually going to Disney World the following week. And my wife at the time, she was like, the only way you're going to nationals is if you take at least one of the boys. So for those people that basically say like nationals is a really stressful experience, it's even more stressful when you have to tote around a 3-year-old kid in a stroller, and you're like, I got to shoot a stage. Oh yeah, God, what's my kids doing? Like, here, have this iPad. Please put these glasses on. Please put these headphones on. Like, look away from the shooting, and I'll be back in a minute. So that was a really interesting challenge. And then a couple years later, I actually brought my youngest again to the last nationals that was in frostproof. So he's shown some interest, in terms of, hey, what are you doing here? The interest that a child would naturally have. But that's no, we'll see. Maybe when primers are more available, and I can reload for him and not necessarily go, oh geez, every bullet you shoot is one less bullet for me.
Exactly. Even I'm getting the wife into competition shooting this year. Hopefully it's going to happen. But I told her primers are on your own. I'll buy powder and bullets. Primers are on your own. But even if she shoots like 1,000 maybe in a year, I'll be like, all right, there you go. Spend your $70 and be okay. But you can't have mine.
Right.
Now, if think of as a CRO, what has been your best match that you've ever worked? Like best experience, could have been the best squad or just atmosphere in general.
Hmm. The nationals that I worked in St. George, where they did a back-to-back nationals, I think this would have been 2019. So that was actually the only nationals that I've worked where I did not shoot. So they had, I think, what was it? Carry Optics and Limited and PCC and Open. And so what I really enjoyed about that experience was it was the first time that I was a CRO at nationals, and I had ROs that this was their first time working at nationals, and it was a really great experience for me to be able to share with them the lessons that I've learned, and to really be a mentor and guide them and say, hey, these are some of the things that we think about. It was really great to see people, these ROs, learn and grow, and come away with the sense of, hey, I shared what I had. I mentored them and hopefully gave them a good experience, so that if it ever came up for them to work another major match or to work in nationals, they would remember that and go, hey, this was actually a really good experience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think we need to make those good experiences and have good times. I mean, yes, you shake everybody's hand at the end of when they're done with the stage, but it doesn't really show the appreciation for you're there 3 to 5 days, 12 hours on the range, running the timer, running a tablet. And sometimes they don't get thanked enough, I think, as an RO or a CRO.
It is definitely a love of labor. I mean, I think when I start, like you asked the question before, I think when I started, I just wanted to see what matches were like and be able to shoot them. And it's certainly become more of a labor of love, where you go out there because you're good at what you do, and you want to see your friends from around the country, and you want to be able to be that example for the next generation of volunteers and staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, if you could give one piece of advice to range officers, to make them better, to maybe even take the next step, what would that be?
Be fair, be professional, and treat every competitor that comes across the stage as the way that you would want to be treated if you're a competitor. It is a volunteer sport, but it's always important to remember, that is kind of that actually, that's something I really appreciate about being an RO, is that the very best, being a good RO is yes, it's being fair and professional and enforcing the rules. But we all started as competitors as well, right? There really isn't that separation between, oh, you're an RO and that's all you do. You'll still shoot your club matches. And so to remember about what it's like when you're a competitor, and to think, okay, if I was a competitor, how would I want to be treated? I think you can never go wrong if you think about that, right? If I was a competitor and I was ROing myself, how would I want to be treated?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of competitors who do talk about competitive equity, right? And everyone wants that high level of competitive equity, and same stages, same kind of conditions, and the fairness that we all deserve to get the right calls that are needed.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're performing. I mean, I'm as an RO, I'm really just scoring the performance that you had. You earn what you earn, and I've always tried to do that in the fairest way possible. Another, just an example to think about is, how many times do we talk about overlays, right? It's very easy to just go up and score a target and just say, oh yeah, this is what it is, and you'll sort of overlay it, and people kind of walk away, and there's always going to be that question of like, well, did this guy actually overlay it? What you could always do is you take the 10-15 seconds to show them, hey, this is your overlay. This is where the overlay touches the perf, and this is your hit. You take that 5 to 10 seconds to explain that. That doesn't really cost you that much in terms of stage flow, but it's treating every competitor as as an adult, which quite frankly, everybody is. Take that time to explain why, and that goes a long way towards proving to the competitors that you're going to give they earn what they earn, and that you're being as fair as possible.
Oh yeah, and it's not hard at all to have your 2 overlays on your body on a lanyard or something in your pocket. There's no excuse not. They give you a million of them. Like, you could ask any range master and be like, "Hey, can I have like 5 sets of overlays?" They'd be like, "Here, take them all. I don't want them."
Yeah, right.
I mean, they send you 2 new ones every year when you recertify. I mean,
yep.
And shoot, you just, like I said, you go to any major match, they're going to hand you more. So it's not hard. It's like there's no excuse not to have an overlay.
Right.
Now, what are your thoughts on staff resetting matches?
If you're in an environment and you have the population to be able to draw from, that could be a really good thing. It definitely, as long as it's fair for everybody, right? So if you have staff reset for everybody in the match, then everybody understands going in there that they're going to have the same environment. I think that sort of ties into the question that you asked at the Casual Shooter podcast about incentivizing staff and bringing in more staff.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a challenge. And so without, let's not get too much into the weeds on that, but it's always sort of a question of, okay, if I have, the minimum that you want to be able to run a stage is 2 staff, 3 staff if you want to be able to rotate, and then how many more staff would you need on top of that to reset? Then it does become a question of, okay, if somebody's out there and they're ROing, that's one thing. If you're telling them, hey, I just want you to come out here and just pace targets,
mm-hmm.
Is that something that you would really be able to draw on, on a consistent basis? Now, that's not saying at a level 2 match, you would be able to do that. But, if you start looking at, say, like an area match or a nationals, I mean, would that, I don't know what kind of sell that would be for someone to say, hey, I want you to come work nationals, but you're going to be out here for 5 or 6 days, and you're literally just going to pace targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely not the most appealing gig. I mean, and a lot of people, who do staff nationals or major matches like yourself, they travel around the country and they staff major matches. They're retired. They love it for something to do, and they still get to shoot. That's kind of why they love it. But it's like, it's definitely hard to say, do you want to just pace some targets all weekend? But I wouldn't want to see nationals. I don't know. I think nationals is a fairly high priced match as it is. And I would hate for the excuse to, it'd be great if they put staff reset on. But if we're just going to raise the match fee from $300 to $400, I mean, would you turn away competitors who purely couldn't make it happen, or say that $400 is too much for nationals at its current form?
I mean, that's kind of an interesting question. I mean, there's certainly nationals that don't sell out, but I mean, if you look at carry out, so we're doing a carry outfits nationals this year. I mean, that's certainly going to sell out. Is $300 really that much to pay for, an entry fee of sorts? I mean, we can We could talk about, what it's like to go to a national event for any other sport, and $300, they're going to say, oh, that's on the low end. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at, uh, potentially taking my oldest. So my oldest is special needs. And so they have a special needs hockey tournament in Pittsburgh this year. And I'm looking at that, even with the potential of, getting my kids, cost reimbursed. I mean, we're talking $3,000 just to, travel and stay at a hotel for a 3-day, special needs hockey tournament. So, there's something to be said about, the context of, oh, is this too much? I mean, so let's talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so you take a look at nationals, and let's just say the match fee for nationals is $300, right? And so some people say, well, that's a lot. Well, let's say the match is 500 people, right? Of those 500 people, you're going to take off a fifth right away, right? Because, let's say you have 20 some odd stages, and each one of those stages is staffed by 3 to 4 ROs. They're not paying the match fee, right? You have the other support staff that aren't paying the match fee, and then you sort of have the sponsors that paid or whatever. So you're already, out of a 500 person match, you're already losing. You're not, you can't account for 100 people, 100 staff worth of match fees, right? So there is that fine balance. And as USPSA, we do run quite a few nationals. I mean, I think this year, what is it, like 6 nationals?
Yeah, about right.
And that's counting the steel challenge guys too, right? So you have the world speed shoot, you have the world steel challenge shoot, you have 2-gun nats, 3-gun nats, classic nats, carry optics nats, and then all the other division nats, right? So that's a lot of major events to budget for and to account for on a year-to-year basis.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Now, speaking about nationals, would you have an all-one nationals for all the divisions, other than 2-gun and multi-gun? I'm in steel challenge, of course, but
I mean, if we were to do a single handgun nats, does that make it more elite? Really isn't the right word, and it's really kind of the first thing that I think of, though. I mean, nationals is really an opportunity to be able to, judge yourself against the best in those divisions, but it's also a little bit of an egalitarian thing, right? There are certainly people who attend nationals that aren't necessarily in it to win it, but they just want to see what the experience is like. I think that would be difficult to kind of say, hey, we're just going to do one handgun nats, right? I mean, you look at the ranges that we're able to host nats at right now. If you did a single handgun nats, you're probably limiting yourself to, let's say we're at Grand Junction, you're probably limiting yourself to about 500 people. So nationals is, I think we have to balance, getting the best of the best to show up in nationals, while also providing the experience for those people who just want to be able to see what it's like at a nationals. So yeah, I don't know that a single handgun nats would be necessarily the way to go.
Yeah, agreed. And there are some people who are at the top who are like, well, I want to compete in every division I can possibly, so I can win all these trophies, and which I can understand that, but God, that's a lot of nationals for staff pulling, and every different direction, and how many different contracts we have to deal with for clubs and hosting nationals.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is a lot of nationals, but that's something that I think certainly what I've seen is we've sort of experimented. I mean, I don't think there is really one correct way to do nationals, right? I mean, I've seen my first nationals was the production nationals, and it was, it was a week long, and there were 3, maybe 4 flights of 3 days apiece. So you had guys shooting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You had guys shooting Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You got guys shooting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And if I remember, that nationals is almost 1,000 people just for one division. And that worked, and that was a really interesting experience. But I think that's something that we're constantly, constantly looking at the different options of say, what works within the constraints that we have.
Oh yeah, we've got to deal with what we got to deal with. That's for sure. Now, I want to talk a little. I want to change what I'm going to do. I want to hit some of these listener questions because I think they're good listener questions.
Sure.
But before I do that, I need to tell the people if you're living under a rock, Yee-Min, you are running for USPSA president. Am I wrong or am I right?
No, you're right. I am in the running for USPSA president.
Right. So some of these questions will relate to that, but yes, Yee-Min is running for president. He is one of. Is there an actual number? I knew there was 5 of you on the Casual Shooters podcast debate. I haven't heard of anyone else come out of the woodworks.
As far as I know, there's 5 right now, but the deadline to submit your petition for president is April 1st. So that number could certainly change.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure. April. Yeah, at the end of April or April 1st?
Beginning. Yeah, April 8th. I think April 1st is the deadline to submit your petition to headquarters for being on the ballot.
Gotcha. Boom. There you go. Now I know. Didn't know. But anyway, I have a couple questions from these listeners that I don't want to forget about because I know if I keep talking, and I know we'll keep talking and I'll forget them. So I want to hit them now.
Sure.
From one of our good buddies, Mr. Doug Dalsky, where did the hashtag semi-pro disrepute come from?
Oh man, that's definitely an interesting question. So some of it was semi-pro disrepute. Really, to me at the time, was a reminder that for the vast majority of us, we are not professionals, right? Like we don't get paid to do this. We definitely try to put our best foot forward. We practice and we make the effort. But there's also a balance between performing well and having fun. And the disrepute, that was, I think there was something a couple of years ago talking about, there was some trend going on about bringing disrepute to the organization. Semi-pro disrepute at the end of the day to me is a reminder to be humble and to remember that, this is a game and a sport that I play for fun. And to not necessarily get too hung up on the results. I think we can all say, I remember a nationals I went to once, and the third day, like I could not get out of my own way, right? Like, you ever been to that stage and you shoot it and you're like, man, that was really good. And then you walk up and you're like, oh my God, I've got like 5 mics and 3 no shoots. And then that kind of weighs on you for like the next stage. And that day, like I tried to center myself and then I go shoot the next stage and it still was like just this colossal dumpster fire. And then you get to that point where you're second guessing yourself and then you start shooting scared. Like, and that was a really tough day. Like that was a really tough day. And I really had to think about, hey, like I'm having a great day. Like I traveled here, I'm in a squad with a bunch of my friends. And that's really, what I can hang my hat on instead of getting really frustrated about just not shooting to what I felt I was capable of.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes we do get way too seriously and we just forget to kind of have fun. And yeah, I don't like taking those dumpster fires to the next stage either. Those are the worst. Luckily, have your dumpster fire on the last stage of the day, so then you can just drive home with it and then be very angry on the drive home.
No, what you do is you take your dumpster fires and you send it to Bill, and he'll just meme you, and it'll be like life goals.
Yes, that would be a great one. Our next question is from Aim to Shoot. They didn't put their name wasn't on their profile, so they're Aim to Shoot. In your run for USPSA Prez, what sets you apart from the other candidates?
I feel like that what sets me apart from the other candidates is really the involvement that I've had within the sport, not just as a competitor, but also as match director, staff, range master. I mean, I've worked at every level at USPSA, and and also, going and traveling and seeing, competitors from around the country in those capacities, spending that time talking with everybody, really empathizing with them in terms of what they see as members, what they see as competitors, and what they see as staff. And being able to take all of that and be sort of the voice of reason while being empathetic to those concerns. That's something that I feel that really kind of sets me apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. With your level of involvement in the sport, you're not just a shooter. You're there, giving them a hug when they have a dumpster fire, or being with them happy when they killed it, when they kill that your stage. It's always that fun thing. And I don't know of any. Don't quote me, guys, but I don't think, other than Bruce Wells, I don't think anyone else has staffed nationals or that many major matches. If I can't put my thumb on it, I don't think they've staffed nationals. But that's here nor there. Our good friend, Mr. Brian Levy, or Reds Dot on the Instagrams. What is your favorite part of the sport?
Definitely the people, the people, the wide variety of backgrounds that everybody comes from. The reasons are up to the individuals, but everybody is in this sport for wanting to get better, to love what it is that we do. I'm reminded there's a buddy of mine that said, and I've always held this to heart, is I joined for the game, but I stayed for the people. And I think that's really the best aspect. All the people that you see out there, just being able to talk about the intricacies of the sport and building those social connections of, like, hey, how are things going? What about this? How's your life? That's really something that has always made it fun for me, more than anything else. I mean, there's always a path that we take, right? You sort of get started, you get really good, and then at some point you sort of level out. And there's always sort of an end to that. But even in that progression of your shooting skill, the people are always there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's kind of, you're right. It's like you come for the sport, but you stay for the people. Because I don't think, like, I've been in many different hobbies, and I will say that I've met more friends that I will call family in this sport than I have in any other hobby, or even in my own, like, family, like my distant family. I'm like, I'll take some of these shooters any day because they're that good people any day of the week. But on the flip side of his question, what is your least favorite and how do we fix it?
I don't think that there's anything that I kind of say is really my least favorite. I mean, certainly you and I are fairly plugged into the social media aspect, so we've seen everything brought up with regards to from the bylaws to the classification system, to staffing at major matches. Those are all really things I think of in terms of, hey, we can do things better. Certainly, we can try to refine and grow toward establishing to those standards. But I don't really consider them as sort of like the least favorite, because at the end of the day, we go to all our club matches, we see all our friends, we go to major matches and see our friends, and there's more good than bad is probably the best way for me to say it. All the other things that come up in social media or that we talk about, those are things I think we can all work together to improve and refine them. But there's not really something where I go, oh yeah, this is just absolutely miserable as far as USPSA is concerned.
Fair enough. I'll take that. The next one we've got is from the Tony. Just wanted him to know he's greatly appreciated for what he does for the sport.
I appreciate it. Thanks, dude.
And then this one was actually posted on the internet. It wasn't actually submitted, but I found it on the internet from Byron Null. What do you think that USPSA should have had an elected president overseeing the bylaws rewrite?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that notification on Instagram, and of course, my response to Brian was like, "Oh man, you're gonna have to make me break out my big brain thinking moment there." Um, the bylaws basically had a process in place in case there was a non-elected president, and so there's always a succession plan at any organization. Would it have been nice to have an elected president? Maybe, maybe not. But at the end of the day, the bylaws are, you had a vice president that was the next step in the succession plan to take over as president. You had, and he came from Area 3, so Sherman was from Area 3, and it happened to be that you had an election where there was, Matt Hawkins was elected, and he was able to take that position, earlier than planned. So the president is only one voice of, again, don't quote me here. The president is one of 9 members of the board that votes on the changes. So, per the organization's succession plans, you did have someone who was an area director that became president. You had somebody that replaced him, and even if you had an elected president, that's just one voice. So you still have nine elected members that are working in the best interest of the organization based on the information they have at the time. I don't necessarily think that having an elected president would have really changed that.
But would you have thought that if you had an elected president, that person would fight to keep their position at a full-time job? Well, on the books, a full-time job without needing I don't know what the term is for the managing director.
Yeah, I think that's what they're calling that, what, the managing director. It is a possibility. One would like to think that regardless of who is elected at the time, that you're going to, approach things from, an impartially as possible, regardless of how it impacts you. This is certainly unusual in the sense that the bylaws that were discussed, impacted a specific elected position. But at the end of the day, it's still just, one vote, right? I mean, even if you had an elected president, that, he still has to convince the majority of the rest of the board to either, make it a paid position or not a paid position, or, full time or not.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that, not trying to pick on the board here, but do you think that the board members, other than Area 3 and Area 4, listened to the feedback that they were given? Or was there not that feedback?
So I have a very unique perspective on that, because I actually asked to attend the board meeting, an in-person board meeting, and I was able to sit in on the second day. So I can absolutely tell you that the board members actually did take the membership input seriously. So when they were sitting through, going through the bylaws, as they went through the bylaws line by line, so even though the result that you saw was that the vote was taken as a whole, they would go through the individual bylaw changes, and constructive member input that was provided, that was actually pulled up. And so they would say, okay, I'm looking at line, 4.5 point whatever. This is the input that I got from certain members, and they would present that input. The board members would have a discussion on that input, and then they would make changes or not, based on that discussion. So personally, from what I observed at the in-person board meeting, all the board members absolutely, took what constructive member input was provided seriously.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess I forget that you actually got to go, the one person to go to the in-person board meeting who wasn't on the board. So.
Yeah.
But that's okay. On later news, I do have other questions for you, because that's what this is. Now, if I'm correct, there is a banner somewhere. I don't know where it is, but it says "Make USPSA fun again" that you have somewhere, probably on your range.
Allegedly.
How do we make USPSA fun again?
I don't necessarily want to say that, maybe make USPSA fun is not the right way to go about it. The most accurate, I think, almost keeping USPSA fun. It's really celebrating in celebrating what we do right. So if you think about, some of the social media stuff that was brought up over the last couple months with the bylaws, did that, if you and I were to go to our club matches, was that the sole topic of discussion? Was it like, oh my God, like USPSA is like a great dumpster fire? Or did we show up and go, hey man, what do you think about this stage? Oh man, the stage is going to test this. Like, how's your how's your wife, how's your kids doing? Hey, what sort of new gun? Or, like, hey, are you checking out this load? I think being able to go back and really show, celebrate what's great about the sport, the people that volunteer, the cool stuff that was at the play with, the accomplishments, and celebrating the accomplishments of, when you do things well, and be empathetic when things don't go so well. I think that's just reminding, really just reminding the membership that, like, at the end of the day, our club matches, which are really the lifeblood of the sport, are still great. Like, it's a lot of fun. We go out there, we enjoy the time, we enjoy the stages and the challenges they provide, and we enjoy the company of our friends.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, speaking about our friends, why must everyone carry a flashlight when taking food pictures of your meal?
You have to make sure that you get the appropriate lighting for your Instagram food pics. And in the absence of accurate lighting, you need to make sure that your friends' food pics are lit up as much as possible, because you do not want to get killed by your food in the streets.
Oh, of course. Now, who's worse? Is it Batista or is it Robert?
Batista is definitely the Instagram food guy. Robert and I just happen to carry flashlights all the time, so that was unintended. We both whipped out our flat. We were at Area 4. We were at Area 4, and we went to this really nice restaurant, and it was not very well lit. So of course, John is trying to take pictures of his food, and Robert and I just broke out our flashlights, like, here you go. And John's like, no, you're ruining my food pic. But it's like, but now you can see your food.
Yes, I do remember this story. But at least you weren't. Well, you were the guys at Walmart later that day too. So.
Yes, it was quite the adventure going to Walmart to help out. To help out the humble marksman with his most excellent costume design.
Mm-hmm. But what he could have done in the time that it took him to figure out his costume design was write a novel while you're making ready.
You know what? If my claim to fame is that I helped somebody write the next great American novel, I will have definitely achieved the life goal.
Yes. Was it really that long, or are they just like picking on you that bad?
No, it can be pretty long, and I am certainly guilty of that. So that, I think Area 4 was one of the few matches that I actually shot as a competitor and not as staff. And there's certainly you start to get the expectations in your head of like, oh, I'm not staff. I'm not just trying to like run competitors. Like, I actually can focus on my own match performance. And there's certainly that seed of doubt that you think, okay, am I really ready to shoot this? And that can definitely extend your make ready time in a way that isn't really the greatest. But I don't know. It's certainly shorter than when I was really trying to be serious a couple of years ago. But yeah, there are those times when it maybe stretches into a minute, and everybody's kind of wondering, when are you actually going to shoot this 10-second stage?
Right. Now, I mean, there are probably high level professional shooters who probably take a lot longer than that. So
at the end of the day, make ready is really your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be good natured joshing when you're like, oh, that's taking like 5 minutes, but very rarely do we ever actually get into that. I mean, it's really something else you talk about, keeping USPSA fun is you think, hey, when it's make ready, it's your time. You get yourself into the mindset that you feel is necessary to perform your best. And, our job as ROs is not to make sure the trains run on time. It's to make sure that we provide the most conducive environment and the most fair and professional, consistent environment for you to perform your best. So that when you get done, you're not saying like, oh, I could have done better because of all these external circumstances. Is, being able to walk away from a stage and going, okay, I shot the best that I could at that time.
Absolutely. But what's even better than doing the best on that stage at that time is walking through with music.
Yeah. That's I know that's something I'm associated with that. And I don't know. It's just that was something I thought about, just trying to keep things fun as a stage as stage staff. I mean, I think I talked about it a little bit when that question came up. We've all been there, being first, and when you're starting, it's mentally very challenging, right? You're like, oh, I'm first. I've never seen the stage before, and you worry about it. And music to me was just one way to maybe give some of that control back to the first shooter, the first competitor, to be able to say, well, I'm first, but at least I'm in a place where, I can find that zone. That being said, all good ideas when, taken to 11 can maybe go off the rails a little bit. So I totally understand. I mean, it's not really for everybody. We are in a place where you have to be able to provide that really nice and that really conducive environment for everybody. And certainly one of the things I noticed is that our ear pro is really good at shutting out really sharp sounds like gunfire. It doesn't really quite do the same thing when music is playing. So I can totally understand how you have to find a balance of keeping things fun while also not distracting your fellow competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you get elected, are we gonna not make it so frowned upon to have walkthrough music at maybe level 2 matches? Maybe.
Well, I mean, level 2 matches, it's entirely up to the match director. I mean, it really, as USPSA president, it's like, well, it's nationals is really all that we would have. That really the president is responsible for, whether it's as a match director or contracting that out. We can always take a look and see how we can work music in. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the stages. Maybe take whoever the national champion was the previous year and give them their own WWE walkthrough music as they come onto the range. And the reigning Karyoptics champion.
Oh, that'd be cool. That would be cool. Now, you've already staffed at least one match this year, and it was a tsunami. I'll call it Caribbean Open.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You want to share a little bit about that experience and how that was different maybe from normal typical matches?
It definitely makes it a little bit of a challenge. Katya and her father Max have done a really great job running this match. They really came up with a very innovative idea to try to get more of us from the United States to come over. So technically it was an outlaw match. So we basically ran IPSC stage design principles. But as far as equipment was concerned, if your gun was USPSA or IPSC legal, you could basically shoot in those divisions. It definitely makes for a challenge to be able to run competitors in the range because you want to be empathetic to having an environment that they can succeed in while not worrying about the fact that it's literally a torrential downpour. At the end of the day, you're just trying to be as flexible as possible. Hey, we understand this is not a great environment, but everybody is kind of going through the same conditions, and you try to have the fun where you can to ensure that the competitors are being as fair, having as fair a setup as possible for them when they actually shoot. So, but and, at the end of the day, it's still fun. They've always done such a great job with stage design. I really loved what they did in terms of trying to do a 3-2-1 concept. The range, every year I go out there, they do something different to improve the range. The facilities are really great, and they've always just had a really great competitor experience. You come out there, everybody's friendly. They're happy to see you there. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those places where you go there and, like you say, it's almost like going to visit family. So regardless of what the shooting conditions are like, regardless of what the stages are like, it's just really great to see friends that you may not have seen in a little while, and especially with the pandemic. The Caribbean Open got canceled last year because of COVID, and then this year, we had some some additional constraints to deal with, whether you've taken the flu shot or not. But then when everybody got there, it was just like it was like it hadn't been 2 years. It's like you just saw them and you're like, hey man, how's it going? It's really great to see you. And yeah, it's like home away from home.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have any issue? Well, due to the rain, was your stage severely affected?
I was lucky enough that the 2 stages I worked on, they didn't have any movers. So really the biggest challenge we had was pasters. I mean, so we actually had pasters, but man, it got really hard trying to get those pasters to stick on the targets. So we just had the traditional targets. I mean, you work through it. They did a great job with the bags and replacing and whatnot, and even from a shooting surface perspective, I mean, those guys were super Johnny on the spot, right? I mean, if we had pools of water or anything, you just had to call, and they came out there with this really, with the right gravel mix, so that you weren't necessarily running on like big huge rocks, but it did a great job in sort of redirecting and absorbing the water, so that it was still a safe shooting surface for everybody involved.
That's excellent. Now, how was the paella?
I will be perfectly honest. I'm usually the last person to go and get the food. What little I did eat, it was most acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think JJ ate everything. So by the time I got there, I was like, "Please, sir, may I have another?"
Right. And it's funny because I think, didn't he have to change all of his outfits just so he could try to go get more?
Yeah, no, it did. I loved that when he posted on Instagram. It's like, oh, let me put on a different shirt each time and try to get some more paella.
I mean, he could have just been like, double fist it and be okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly. Now, Yee, I want to go over, you've sent me the little document. I want you to go over your campaign a little bit so the people kind of know your talking points a little bit of, for running for president.
So for everybody else listening, I absolutely apologize. This is going to be, a little bit more formal than most. But again, my name is Yee-Min, and I am running for USPSA president. And my plan is to work daily for you in collaborative leadership to build relationships for a greater USPSA. So what I really have 4 points. What are those 4 points? One is that we all deserve fair and professional treatment as members and competitors. Second, that we want defined guidance on running great club matches. Third is to discover a measured social media campaign outreach so that we can reach fellow enthusiasts and build a community amongst the current membership. And last but not least, through example, fostering a volunteer culture that is the lifeblood and engine that drives our sport, keep USPSA fun and enjoyable for all members.
Very good points, I will say, sir. They're concise, they're simple, yet they can be expounded upon in different avenues, and we can look at these 4 different pillars or aspects of the plan for that good goal. Now, when you talk about a local guidance for quality club matches, what is kind of like the plan for that, or your ideas right now on that?
So it's really 3 parts. So, and these are things that I think that as an organization, it's something that's very achievable even within the remainder of this current term. So one is a new club guide, and again, I'm sure USPSA might actually be working on all 3 of those. I don't necessarily have the visibility into that, but one is a new club guide. So if you want, let's say you, Alex, wanted to start up a new club somewhere, there's a little bit of information on the website, but as far as how to go about it, step-by-step process, especially considering that a lot of clubs start up and they're basically on a shoestring budget. How do I run matches in accordance with the rule book with not with essentially a small budget? I think that's something that would be very helpful, because again, if we don't have the clubs for members to shoot at, we could have 50 to 100,000 members, and where they're not going to have any place to be able to participate. The second thing I was thinking about was really a new competitor guide, and that's certainly something that I've seen discussed before. It's literally from a social media perspective, hey, if I'm going to my match for the first time, what do I need? Like, what should I do? What should I bring? And that can be broken down in such a way where we, focus on the safety stuff, but also, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know what it was like for you, but when I showed up at my first USPSA match, I literally just showed up with whatever I had. I mean, I showed up and shot limited with a Glock 19 and a Raven concealment holster and Raven concealment pouches, because that's what I had at the time. And then last but not least, and I know this is probably going to be, the most in-depth, is a guide for existing match directors. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a this is the only way to do it. I mean, well, let's think about the match director guide as sort of one way to think about it is almost like a franchise guide, right? Like, these are some best practices on how you can build stages, how you can design stages, how you get volunteers, pricing your match fees, so on and so forth. And having that, at least it's not having that guide for a match director to be able to look at. I think that's something that would be a service to the clubs that would be well received.
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially when you mention like that new club that's starting up that has no extra money, right? They've got what they've got and they're trying to make it work. A place to go or an idea to go on is definitely actionable for them. They can be like, all right, someone's laid the groundwork for me to be able to plug what I've got into this and make it really work. It's unfortunate. I think they changed the bylaws that the org would not help monetarily with like getting clubs set up, if I'm mistaken, right?
Yeah, something like that, if I remember correctly.
But it's definitely, at least if we can, in the current bylaws with this, you can give the right guidance for the clubs and the match directors. Because some people, they start being like, oh, I'm going to design stages. And then they're the assistant match director. And then, oh shit, the match director is not here. So I actually got to do everything, or I got to do things that I don't normally do or have any clue on doing yet.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely, I think it's a good idea. It's a right foot in the right direction. It's nice to see that. And I would agree, our marketing and social media could use a little bit of work. I mean, Jake Martins is only one guy, so not to call him out and say that he's doing a bad job, because I think he's doing a pretty decent job in most of the things he does. I mean, he takes good criticism and good feedback, and I mean, but there's always room for everyone to improve. I know I can improve on what I do, so it's not like I'm saying, I'm not calling the pot calling the kettle black or kind of something like that. probably botched that phrase or that saying, but hey, whatever, right?
No, I mean I mean you could absolutely empathize. I mean, I totally empathize with what Jake is going through right now. I mean, he's got to deal with, he's got to deal with marketing, he's got to deal with the sponsors. He is effectively the match director. So, you're talking about somebody who is having to organize and plan for 6 major national events with all the logistics that are associated with that. Um, and he's also someone that is a primary point of contact for people asking about different things. So I can totally empathize with Jake, being kind of feeling like a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it'd definitely be nice. I know there are a lot of content creators who would love to dabble into adding to the USPSA marketing. I know they would. That I know when I talked to Jake last, it wasn't in the cards, but maybe it could change. It'd definitely be nice to get the members and the competitors who have knacks for that, like certain content creators that aren't necessarily just influencers or actual shooters, and they know the sport to help promote it in a new way.
I mean, we see the very best and brightest competitors, that have skill sets, far beyond, what we, would imagine. So they try to appeal to that and giving people credit. Hey, can you help us spread the word? I mean, that honestly, I can't count the number of people that I've heard get involved in the sport because their buddy was like, "Hey, I think you should do this."
Mm-hmm.
And it's figuring out how to sort of scale that up so that that word of mouth is something that can be driven at a national level.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree. And it's nice to be able to bring that new person into the sport, mentor them but get them to then decide to stick around and build that community and help them grow in the sport and in the community too. Not just something, it's not just a hobby that I show up the first Sunday of the month and then I shoot my match and that's it. And that's all I care about it. Where you can then build them up and then be like, oh yeah, I'm talking about it. I'm going to the practice nights. I'm going and I'm
Yep.
bringing someone new with me back, and then that genuine community that we're trying to build.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
Well, Yee-Min, this has been fun. We're not quite done yet because I did remember I have a couple more things, but
Yeah, no problem, dude.
well, this is a good one. When you're thinking about all this, and it's been a big drama since, talking about the presidency, the bylaws, and all the crap that goes on social media, how do you stay connected yet not get pulled into the bullshit?
Man, that sounds like a life question. How do we keep ourselves centered and focused when it seems like the world is sort of on fire around you? I think really looking at what's being discussed in social media as a source of information, but then always going back to what we see at the club matches, right? I mean, so we can see all the memes that are posted and sort of all the drama that's been talked about in the podcast. And then you go to shoot your club matches, right? And you show up and that's not really there anymore, right? I mean, we don't go to our club matches and we don't go start talking about, oh, like there's people cheating on classifiers, not setting that up right, or, this, that, and the other. It's really remembering what we love about the sport to begin with. So even all the stuff that's being discussed, that it there is a grain of truth to all that, right? It's because
Mm-hmm.
we care, so much about having a sport that is fair and equal, and that there's a level playing field for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to understand and empathize and recognize that there's room for improvement. But then you show up at the club match and you start shooting and everybody starts talking about hey, how are things going? And your buddy comes up there and either has a just blows that stage out of the water, or just has a colossal dumpster fire, and it's almost like none of that all sort of falls by the wayside, because you're having fun, you're hanging out with your friends,
Mm-hmm.
shooting a sport that we all love. So I think the club matches, and the camaraderie and the social interaction is what I can always fall back on to remind me of, even with all the the discussions and the drama that that we perceive, when it comes to being in person, that's that's just that's just there, right? And your friends are there, and watching them shoot or not shoot well, or that's what's real to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Those are some good words. Now, Yee-Min, now I'm losing my brain. No, I'm not. There it is. It's right there. Just had to connect it again. What's the next major match you're going to be attending?
So we have the Roadrunner match that's being emceed by Greg Vaughn is coming up at the end of March. So that is the next major match that I'll be attending and working. And that's going to be at the Central California Pistol League, hosted by Fresno Rifle Pistol Club. So that's a 11, 12 stages over 2 days. Yeah, so that's the next major match I've got coming up that I'll be working.
Okay. And are you shooting Golden Bullet too, or?
I wish I could shoot Golden Bullet this year. It happened to be at the same time as the Colorado State match, and Colorado State match is a match that I've helped them since they started that match back up in 2016. So unfortunately, I committed to that match first.
Gotcha.
As staff.
Well, a little bit farther of a drive, right? Or are you going to fly to Colorado?
I am not sure yet. Kind of depends on what Jody does. So if Jody flies in, I will probably drive and eat up the 12 to 16 hours it takes for me to get to Grand Junction.
It's okay. That's I'm 16 to 17 hours to go to Maine from Michigan this year.
Woo.
Yep. I blame you, JBL, but I don't blame you, sir. He's a really good vacation salesman. He's a goat farmer, a GM level shooter, and a vacation salesman. Put it on your resume, Jay. It worked.
There you go. Life goals, dude. Life goals.
Exactly. Now, does someone support you in your shooting other than your wallet?
No, not really. Not really.
Usually this is the part where I ask about sponsors, but I change the words a little bit sometimes. So, but where is a good place for people to get a hold of you and contact you if they've got questions for you?
Certainly my Instagram, Yee-Min.Lin. I think that's probably the best place to get a hold of me. I created a specific campaign Gmail account, keepuspsafun@gmail.com. So you can always email me there. You can find me on Facebook, Carrier Pigeon, so on and so forth. But Instagram and Facebook are probably the easiest ways for you to get a hold of me. And then this email account that I just created.
Excellent. Those are good ways to get a hold of people. Yee-Min, thank you Thank you again for coming on. Why? Oh my God. Brain, please work so I can do this in outro. God. Yee-Min, thank you for coming on, dude. It's been a blast. It's been fun. I've learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners learned a lot about you, your shooting, how the hard work you do for the sport now and in the future, and in your campaign. I mean, we've got not very long until the special election finally happens. Depending on when this one actually comes out, a little bit closer to that than the record date, but it's been fun, and I do appreciate your time. It's been a blast.
No, I'm really glad. I'm really happy to finally be on the show. I know we've talked about it for a good little while, and the schedule's finally aligned. So it's really great to spend that time with you today.
It's definitely been fun. We will have to do it again, no matter what. Even if you don't become president, we can still have you on, and we can do some more bullshitting because that's always fun too.
Right on, dude.
Now, I thank you again, listeners. I also want to thank you for checking out the show every single week. I appreciate every one of you who checks this out because you're part of my shooting family too, even though you just listen to me talk or let me talk to these guests and whatnot. So I do appreciate all of you because without you, I probably wouldn't be doing this, even though I enjoy this very, very much. So thank you guys. Until next time, get out and do the things, and I'll see you on the next one.